What if I told you that something is already moving behind the scenes, and once it starts, it cannot be stopped? Not tomorrow. Not someday. This week. If you're here, this message didn't find you by accident. The December 12th portal is opening, and it's not gentle. It's not subtle. It's a force, one that collapses delays, exposes truth, and forces twin flame energy back into alignment, whether either of you feel ready or not. You may have felt it already. The restlessness. The sudden memories. The emotional pressure building in your chest for no clear reason. Or maybe an unexpected calm, like the storm hasn't hit yet, but the air has changed. That's not imagination. That's the portal activating. This is not just another spiritual date on the calendar. December 12th is a point of no return. A threshold where avoidance loses power, where running stops working, and where separation can no longer sustain itself energetically. For some, this means contact. For others, a shocking realization. For all twin flames aligned to this portal, it means one thing: the dynamic is about to shift permanently. And here's the part you need to hear clearly: ignoring this moment does not pause it. It doesn't delay it. It redirects it in ways you may not expect. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what the December 12th portal is doing to twin flame connections, why the pressure is peaking right now, and what signs prove reunion energy is already locked in motion. Stay with me, because once you understand what's unfolding, you'll realize why this week changes everything, and why missing this message could cost you clarity when you need it most. As the 12/12 portal opens, something subtle yet irreversible begins to occur beneath the surface of your reality. You may not hear a sound or see a visible sign, but deep within the energetic fabric of your life, old timelines are collapsing. These timelines are not memories or past events, they are parallel paths your soul once had the option to continue walking. Paths defined by waiting, by uncertainty, by loving from a distance, and hoping instead of knowing. With the activation of this portal, those paths no longer receive energy. They are not punished or destroyed, they simply fade, like roads no longer traveled because your soul has outgrown them. For a long time, multiple versions of your future coexisted. In some of them, reunion was delayed indefinitely. In others, it felt impossible, blocked by fear, timing, or unresolved wounds. These timelines survived because part of you was still learning, still strengthening, still remembering your worth. But now, something has shifted. The universe no longer feeds energy into outcomes that require you to diminish yourself, doubt your path, or remain in emotional suspension. Those realities lose their structural integrity. You are not choosing against them, they are simply no longer compatible with who you have become. This is why you may notice a sudden inability to tolerate confusion. What once felt familiar, overthinking, second-guessing, waiting for signs, now feels exhausting or foreign. The loops you lived in for months or years begin to close on their own. You are not pulled back into old emotional cycles as easily. Even when memories surface, they no longer carry the same gravitational weight. This is a clear sign that you have exited the timelines where stagnation was necessary for growth. Your soul no longer needs to repeat lessons through delay. When old timelines collapse, clarity does not arrive as excitement, it arrives as stillness. There is a quiet knowing that you are no longer on hold. The future no longer feels fragmented or conditional. Instead, it narrows into something precise and grounded. Only the timeline that matches your current vibration remains accessible. This is the timeline of alignment, where love does not require struggle to exist, and where union is not a reward but a natural consequence of inner coherence. It is important to understand that this does not mean everything happens instantly or dramatically. Spiritual alignment works through inevitability, not force. The collapse of old timelines means that what is not aligned cannot sustain itself around you anymore. Delays lose momentum. Obstacles resolve or dissolve. Situations that once felt heavy simply stop appearing. You are no longer navigating infinite possibilities, you are walking a single, supported path. This is the true gift of the 12/12 portal. It is not about chasing a future or fixing a past. It is about standing in a present where only what belongs with you can remain. Alignment becomes the only viable option because you have become aligned. Union becomes natural because separation is no longer energetically supported. And in this quiet but powerful shift, you realize that nothing was ever taken from you. Only what no longer matched who you are now has gently fallen away. There comes a moment on the spiritual path when resistance simply dissolves, not because it was fought, analyzed, or forced away, but because it is no longer needed. This is the moment you are entering now. The end of energetic resistance does not arrive with drama or effort. It arrives quietly, like a deep exhale after years of holding your breath. Subconscious barriers that once protected you from pain begin to loosen, not because you have become careless, but because you have become safe within yourself. Your soul recognizes that the season of survival is over. For a long time, love may have felt like something you had to manage carefully. Even when you wanted closeness, part of you stayed alert, braced for disappointment or loss. These defenses were not flaws. They were intelligent responses to experiences that required strength and endurance. Your nervous system learned to stay vigilant, to anticipate withdrawal, rejection, or instability. But now, without you having to do anything differently, those survival-based patterns soften. You are not dismantling them. Your system simply understands that the threat has passed. This shift is deeply physical as well as spiritual. The body begins to recognize safety where it once sensed danger. The constant background tension eases. Breathing becomes fuller. The chest no longer feels guarded or tight. You may notice that your reactions slow down, that you pause instead of bracing. This is your nervous system moving out of fight or flight and into receptivity. It is learning a new language, one where presence replaces protection, and trust replaces control. When energetic resistance ends, love stops feeling like a test. It no longer appears as something that must be earned, proven, or constantly monitored. The fear that love will disappear if you relax loses its hold. You begin to experience connection without scanning for what might go wrong. This does not mean you become naive or unboundaried. It means your boundaries no longer come from fear, they come from self-respect and inner stability. One of the most profound changes during this phase is how love feels in your body. It becomes warm instead of sharp, steady instead of overwhelming. There is no longer a need to guard against intimacy or pull away when closeness deepens. Love is no longer associated with loss of self or emotional risk. It feels natural, nourishing, and safe. You are no longer preparing for abandonment, you are present for connection. Spiritually, this is the point where receiving becomes effortless. You are no longer pushing love away unconsciously while consciously desiring it. The inner conflict resolves. What you want and what you allow finally align. This is why love can now meet you fully, because there is nothing left inside you that says it must be withheld. The end of energetic resistance is not the beginning of vulnerability as weakness, it is the embodiment of trust as strength. You have learned that love does not require you to be armored, hyper-aware, or self-sacrificing to survive. It requires you to be open, grounded, and present. And now that your system knows this, love no longer feels unsafe or conditional. It feels like home, because at last you are home within yourself. There is a quiet but profound shift that marks true spiritual maturity, the restoration of inner authority. This is the moment when you stop looking outward for permission to trust your own path. For a long time, guidance may have come through signs, readings, or the reassurance of others. These tools served a purpose during seasons of uncertainty, but now something deeper awakens. Your own inner voice begins to rise above the noise, steady and unmistakable. You no longer feel the need to ask the world who you are or where you are going. You already know. When inner authority is restored, the craving for validation dissolves naturally. You are no longer unsettled by differing opinions or conflicting advice. What once created confusion now passes through you without disturbance. This does not come from arrogance or spiritual superiority, it comes from alignment. Your nervous system and your intuition are finally working together. Instead of searching for confirmation outside yourself, you feel a calm recognition inside your body when something is right or wrong. The knowing is not dramatic. It is grounded, embodied, and stable. As this inner authority strengthens, decisions begin to change in quality. Choices are no longer driven by fear of loss, abandonment, or delay. You do not act from urgency or anxiety. Instead, decisions arise from a place of certainty. Even when the path ahead is unknown, there is no panic. You move forward with trust, not because you are guaranteed outcomes, but because you trust yourself to navigate whatever unfolds. This is a crucial distinction. Fear-based decisions shrink your world, authority-based decisions expand it. Spiritually, this restoration marks the end of dependency and the beginning of sovereignty. You are no longer outsourcing your power to timing, signs, or interpretations. Guidance still exists, but it complements your inner knowing rather than replacing it. You recognize when a sign is resonant and when it is noise. You no longer feel compelled to seek repeated confirmation. One clear inner yes or no is enough. This clarity brings peace, because doubt no longer governs your movement. This shift has a profound effect on love and union. When inner authority is missing, relationships become unstable, driven by reassurance seeking or fear of losing connection. But when authority is restored, love is grounded. You no longer shape yourself to maintain harmony at the cost of truth. You do not tolerate misalignment out of fear. Your presence becomes steady, consistent, and emotionally available without being reactive. This creates a foundation where union can exist without chaos. Stability in union is not created by control or constant effort. It is created by two individuals who are rooted in themselves. Your restored inner authority anchors the connection in reality rather than fantasy. You are no longer pulled off balance by external circumstances or emotional fluctuations. You show up as yourself, fully, without needing to prove or defend your journey. This is the essence of spiritual authority, not dominance, but self-trust. Not rigidity, but clarity. You have walked far enough, learned deeply enough, and healed thoroughly enough to stand in your own knowing. And from this place, love no longer needs to be chased or questioned. It meets you where you are, stable, grounded, and real, because you are finally leading your life from within. There is a moment in the twin flame journey when the exhausting push and pull finally loses its power. This is the moment of reversal in the runner-chaser dynamic, and it does not happen through force, confrontation, or strategy. It happens through alignment. For a long time, the imbalance between pursuit and withdrawal served as a catalyst for growth. One soul learned detachment and self-worth, while the other learned accountability and emotional presence. But once the lesson is complete, the dynamic no longer has a purpose. Energy seeks balance by its very nature, and when balance is possible, it asserts itself naturally. As energetic polarity corrects itself, something subtle yet undeniable shifts. The chaser no longer feels driven by anxiety or urgency. The need to reach out, explain, or fix dissolves. This is not resignation or emotional shutdown, it is clarity. The chaser has returned to themselves. Their energy is no longer scattered or externally focused. Instead, it becomes centered, grounded, and full. And when the chaser stops chasing, it is not because they no longer care, but because they no longer need to prove their worth or fight for love. At the same time, the runner begins to feel something unfamiliar, pull. Without being pressured, chased, or reminded, they sense the absence of the energy that once followed them. This absence is not cold or punishing, it is magnetic. The runner becomes aware of what was always present but never fully felt. When there is no longer someone trying to close the distance, the runner is finally able to turn inward and face the connection honestly. The pull to return arises organically, not from guilt or fear, but from recognition. This is the most important part of the reversal. It is not manipulated or engineered. It is not a tactic. It is a consequence of inner alignment. When the chaser heals their attachment wounds and claims their autonomy, they stop reinforcing the imbalance. The energy equalizes. The runner, no longer supported by avoidance, feels the emotional gravity of the bond in a new way. What once felt overwhelming now feels grounding. What once felt threatening now feels safe. balance at the core level transforms the entire connection. Communication, when it occurs, is no longer charged with desperation or defensiveness. Silence, if it happens, no longer triggers panic. Both souls stand on their own ground. This independence does not weaken the bond, it strengthens it. Union built on balance is sustainable because it does not rely on one person carrying the emotional weight for both. Spiritually, this reversal is a sign of maturity. It signals that both souls have integrated their lessons. The chaser has learned self-love and detachment. The runner has learned responsibility and presence. Neither role is needed anymore. When the polarity corrects, both individuals meet as equals, not as opposites locked in conflict. This is where true union becomes possible. Not as a dramatic reunion fueled by longing and fear, but as a grounded coming together anchored in respect and choice. The chase ends. The running ends. What remains is balance, and in that balance, love finally has the space to stay. There is a sacred moment on the spiritual path when certain relationships, patterns, and emotional bonds simply lose their hold. This moment is not marked by dramatic endings or painful confrontations. It is quiet, almost imperceptible, yet profoundly liberating. This is the closure of karmic contracts. These contracts were never punishments. They were agreements made at the soul level to facilitate growth, healing, and awareness. Once their purpose is fulfilled, they do not demand struggle to end. They expire naturally, like a lesson completed. Karmic contracts are often formed through shared wounds, trauma that recognizes itself in another, fear that bonds two souls through survival rather than love, or obligation rooted in past experiences. For a time, these connections feel intense and unavoidable. They teach boundaries, self-worth, and discernment. But when the lesson is integrated, the energy that sustained the bond begins to fade. There is no dramatic rupture. Instead, attachment loosens. Emotional reactions soften. What once felt heavy or urgent no longer commands attention. One of the most misunderstood aspects of karmic closure is the belief that it requires explanation or confrontation. In truth, the most complete closures occur without either. When a karmic contract ends, the need to be understood disappears. You no longer feel compelled to justify your growth or seek validation for your decision to move on. Silence becomes sufficient. Distance becomes peaceful rather than painful. This is how you know the contract has expired, because there is no longer a pull to engage, fix, or defend. Spiritually, this process is not about rejection, it is about reclamation. Energy that was once bound in obligation, guilt, or fear returns to its rightful owner. You may notice a sudden increase in vitality, clarity, or emotional availability. This is not because something new has been added to your life, but because something old has finally released its claim on your energy. You are no longer carrying what does not belong to your present self. The beauty of karmic closure lies in its lack of conflict. There is no need for blame, anger, or dramatic endings. In fact, these are signs that the contract is still active. True closure feels neutral. You can remember the connection without longing or resentment. Gratitude replaces attachment. You recognize the role the connection played in your growth without feeling tethered to it. This neutrality is the hallmark of spiritual completion. As these contracts dissolve, space opens within you. This space is essential for higher-aligned connections, including harmonious union. Love that is rooted in fear cannot coexist with love rooted in truth. By releasing karmic attachments, you clear the emotional and energetic field necessary for stable, conscious connection. You are no longer repeating old patterns or reenacting unresolved dynamics. Ultimately, the closure of karmic contracts is an act of self-honor. It affirms that you have learned what you came to learn. It confirms that you are no longer bound by past versions of yourself. Energy is reclaimed gently, without force, and redirected toward alignment and authenticity. In this quiet release, you step forward unencumbered, free to love, choose, and live from a place of wholeness rather than survival. There is a profound shift that occurs when self-worth moves out of the realm of effort and into embodiment. This is not the kind of worth that must be asserted, defended, or demonstrated through achievement or endurance. It is quieter and far more powerful. It is the realization that your value is not something you earn through sacrifice, patience, or tolerance of pain. It simply is. When worth is embodied rather than pursued, the nervous system relaxes and the soul stands upright in its truth. For much of the journey, self-worth may have felt fragile, something to guard carefully or reinforce through external affirmation. You may have felt the need to prove that you were lovable, loyal, or deserving of commitment. But as this phase ends, the compulsion to explain yourself dissolves. You stop measuring your value through others' responses. There is nothing left to protect because there is nothing left that can be taken. Worth becomes a state of being rather than a conclusion drawn from circumstances. When worth is embodied, it changes how you occupy space. You no longer negotiate your needs internally before expressing them. You do not shrink to preserve connection or overextend to feel chosen. You stand in your presence fully, without apology. This does not create distance, it creates clarity. People can feel when someone knows who they are. This knowing does not demand respect, it naturally commands it. This vibration makes compromise impossible in the ways it once occurred. Compromise rooted in fear, scarcity, or self-abandonment no longer feels tolerable. You may still choose flexibility, understanding, and compassion, but you will not trade your truth for temporary peace. The body itself will not allow it. Discomfort arises immediately when something asks you to betray yourself. This is not rigidity, it is alignment. You have become energetically allergic to situations that require you to disappear. Spiritually, this is one of the most important thresholds to cross before true union can occur. Union that requires self-betrayal is not union, it is repetition of old karmic patterns. When you embody worth without effort, love is no longer something you chase or negotiate for. It meets you where you are because you are no longer available for connections that diminish you. This does not limit love, it purifies it. In this state, you no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or sacrifice with devotion. You recognize that real love does not ask you to abandon yourself to be chosen. It asks you to remain fully present as yourself. Your worth is not dependent on being needed, missed, or validated. It is anchored in your existence. This anchoring creates emotional stability and spiritual safety within the connection. Union can now occur without self-betrayal because there is nothing left to give up to be loved. You bring your whole self into the connection, not fragments shaped by fear. You no longer hope love will recognize your value, you already know it. And when two people meet from this place, love becomes expansive rather than consuming. This is the embodiment of worth, effortless, grounded, and unshakable. You do not perform for love. You do not endure for love. You allow love to rise to meet you at the level you already inhabit. And from this place, union is not a test of endurance, it is a shared experience of truth. There is a powerful moment on the spiritual path when the inner noise quiets and something essential comes into alignment. The heart, the mind, and the body, once operating as separate voices, begin to move together as one unified system. This is the alignment of heart, mind, and body, and it marks the end of internal fragmentation. For a long time, you may have felt torn between what you felt, what you thought, and what you did. Love pulled you in one direction, logic in another, and the body carried the weight of unresolved tension. Alignment begins when these parts finally listen to one another. As coherence emerges, the inner conflict that once consumed energy dissolves. The heart no longer speaks in longing while the mind argues in fear. The body no longer carries stress signals that contradict your words. Instead, thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to agree. When you feel something, you understand it. When you decide something, your body supports it. This harmony creates an internal sense of peace that does not depend on external circumstances. You no longer feel divided against yourself. One of the clearest signs of this alignment is the disappearance of mixed signals within the self. You stop saying yes while feeling no. You stop thinking one thing while doing another. Your energy becomes readable, to yourself and to others. This clarity is deeply grounding. It removes the confusion that once made decisions feel heavy or relationships unstable. You are no longer negotiating internally before responding to life. You respond from wholeness. Spiritually, coherence is magnetic. When the heart, mind, and body are aligned, energy flows without resistance. There are no internal blockages pulling you in opposite directions. This creates a strong, steady energetic field that naturally attracts what matches it. Love, especially, responds to coherence. Union is not drawn to chaos or contradiction, it is drawn to clarity and stability. When you are whole within yourself, connection does not feel overwhelming or destabilizing, it feels natural. This alignment also changes how you experience desire and intention. You no longer want something while fearing its arrival. You no longer ask for love while bracing for disappointment. Your body trusts what your heart desires, and your mind supports the process rather than questioning it. This trust allows manifestation and connection to occur with far less effort. You are no longer sending conflicting signals into the universe. As internal coherence strengthens, the magnetic field of union intensifies. This is not a forceful pull, it is a steady resonance. Others feel it as presence. Your twin flame feels it as clarity. Communication, whether spoken or energetic, becomes cleaner. Misunderstandings dissolve more easily because there is no internal contradiction fueling them. You are no longer trying to connect from a fragmented state. Ultimately, alignment of heart, mind, and body is a return to truth. It is the state you were meant to inhabit before fear and conditioning created division within you. In this state, love does not require effort to sustain itself. You do not have to convince, chase, or correct anything. You simply are. And when you move through the world as a coherent whole, union becomes inevitable, not because you are searching for it, but because you have become a clear, stable frequency that love recognizes and meets effortlessly. There is a subtle but life-changing moment on the spiritual path when fear loses its ability to create stories. This is the dissolution of fear-based fantasies, the imagined futures that once felt so real they shaped your emotions, decisions, and sense of safety. For a long time, your mind may have been trained to anticipate loss, abandonment, or disappointment as a form of protection. These fantasies were not signs of weakness, they were survival mechanisms meant to prepare you for pain. But as your consciousness evolves, the mind no longer needs to rehearse suffering in advance. When fear-based fantasies dissolve, catastrophic thinking begins to lose its grip. The constant, what if, questions quiet down. You no longer project worst-case scenarios into the future or brace yourself for outcomes that have not occurred. The mind stops scanning for threats that are no longer present. This does not happen because life suddenly becomes predictable, but because you trust your ability to respond to whatever arises. You are no longer trying to control the future by fearing it. One of the most noticeable shifts during this phase is how imagined losses lose their emotional charge. You may still recognize potential challenges, but they no longer hijack your nervous system. Thoughts that once caused tightness in the chest or waves of anxiety now pass through without impact. The emotional body no longer reacts to images of loss as if they are real. This creates a sense of spaciousness inside, a feeling that there is room to breathe again. As fear loosens its hold, the future begins to feel different. Instead of appearing as a looming threat, it feels neutral, or even quietly hopeful. You are no longer mentally racing ahead to protect yourself from pain that may never come. The unknown becomes a place of possibility rather than danger. This shift does not require blind optimism, it arises from grounded trust. You know that even if difficulties arise, you will meet them with presence rather than panic. Spiritually, this transition marks the return of peace as a baseline state. Peace no longer feels like a temporary break between moments of anxiety. It becomes the default background of your experience. When disturbances arise, they pass more quickly and do not define your inner landscape. Your system has learned that it does not need constant vigilance to survive. This allows your energy to move out of defense and into presence. Living without fear-based fantasies does not mean you stop caring or planning. It means you stop suffering in advance. You stop borrowing pain from futures that do not exist. This frees immense emotional and creative energy. You become more available for love, connection, and joy because you are no longer mentally elsewhere. You are here. In this state, peace is not fragile. It does not depend on perfect circumstances or guaranteed outcomes. It is rooted in trust in yourself, trust in life, and trust in the unfolding of your path. The mind no longer competes with the heart. The body no longer prepares for impact. Everything softens. When fear no longer writes your future, you experience life directly rather than through imagined catastrophe. And in that direct experience, you discover that peace was never something to achieve. It was what remained once fear released its grip. There is a form of confidence that does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition, agreement, or validation. It simply exists, steady and unshaken. This is the awakening of quiet confidence, and it arises not from achievement or control, but from deep inner alignment. Unlike confidence born from comparison or performance, this one grows from self-trust. It does not push outward, it settles inward. You feel it not as excitement, but as calm. As this confidence awakens, reactivity begins to fade. Situations that once triggered the need to defend, explain, or correct no longer hold the same charge. You do not feel numb or disengaged, you feel grounded. There is a sense of being rooted in yourself, as though your center of gravity has moved inward. External chaos no longer pulls you off balance so easily. You respond rather than react, and even when emotions arise, they pass through without overtaking you. One of the most noticeable shifts during this phase is the disappearance of the need to explain your journey. You no longer feel compelled to justify your choices, your timing, or your path. Words feel unnecessary where knowing already exists. Silence becomes comfortable, even sacred. This silence is not secrecy or withdrawal, it is confidence that does not require witnesses. You understand that not everyone needs to understand you, and that understanding does not determine truth. Spiritually, this quiet confidence signals integration. The lessons you learn are no longer something you talk about, they are something you embody. Your energy speaks before you do. There is less urgency to prove growth or demonstrate insight. You are no longer performing healing, you are living it. This embodiment creates a presence that others feel immediately, even if they cannot name it. This calm strength is deeply attractive energetically because it is non-invasive. It does not seek to convince or impress. It invites rather than demands. People feel safe around it because it does not compete or dominate. It allows others to be themselves without pressure. In energetic terms, this creates resonance. Those who are aligned feel drawn closer, while those who are not naturally fall away without conflict. In relationships, this confidence changes everything. You no longer chase reassurance or fear being misunderstood. You do not overextend to maintain harmony. You trust that what is meant for you will recognize you without explanation. This trust removes desperation from connection. Love is no longer pursued through effort, it is allowed through presence. Quiet confidence also deepens discernment. You no longer need to argue your boundaries, they are felt. You no longer debate your worth, it is assumed. This does not make you rigid, it makes you clear. You become selective without being closed. Open without being unguarded. Strong without being hard. Ultimately, the awakening of quiet confidence is the return to self after a long journey through doubt, striving, and self-questioning. You no longer need to be loud to be powerful. You no longer need to be visible to be valid. You are anchored in who you are, and that anchoring radiates outward effortlessly. This is the kind of confidence that lasts. Not because it resists challenge, but because it does not depend on circumstance. It is calm, grounded, and deeply magnetic, because it comes from truth lived, not identity performed. There is a phase on the spiritual path that is often overlooked because it does not happen in the mind or the emotions first, it happens in the body. This is the phase of physical body recalibration. After long periods of emotional intensity, spiritual awakening, and inner work, the body begins to catch up to the transformation that has already occurred within. The body is not separate from the soul's journey, it is the vessel that carries it. When alignment deepens, the body must reorganize itself to sustain the new frequency. One of the first signs of recalibration is a shift in sleep patterns. You may find that restless nights begin to ease, or that your body naturally asks for rest at different times. Sleep becomes deeper, more restorative, even if the number of hours changes. This is not laziness or exhaustion, it is integration. The nervous system is finally receiving signals of safety. It no longer needs to remain alert or hypervigilant. As survival energy dissolves, the body allows itself to rest fully. Alongside sleep, subtle changes appear in appetite, breath, and posture. You may notice that you crave simpler, more nourishing foods or that emotional eating loses its grip. Breathing becomes slower and deeper without conscious effort. The chest opens. The shoulders drop. Your posture shifts as if an invisible weight has been removed. These changes are not cosmetic, they are energetic. The body is responding to the release of long-held tension and fear. As recalibration continues, stored grief begins to surface and release. This grief may not be tied to a single memory or event. It is often ancestral, relational, or accumulated from years of holding yourself together during moments of loss, abandonment, or emotional restraint. The release may come through tears without a clear story, spontaneous sighs, trembling, or moments of deep emotional softness. This is not regression, it is completion. The body is letting go of what it no longer needs to protect you from. Spiritually, this release is essential. The body cannot hold higher frequencies of love and connection while still carrying the armor of past pain. As stored tension dissolves, space opens within the physical vessel. You may feel lighter, more present, more embodied. Sensations become clearer. Touch feels deeper. Movement feels more fluid. You are no longer living from the neck up, you are fully inhabiting yourself. This recalibration is preparation. Union energy is not purely emotional or spiritual, it is embodied. It requires a body that can remain open without collapsing, grounded without bracing, receptive without fear. The physical vessel must be able to hold intimacy, presence, and stability simultaneously. This is why the body adjusts first, quietly and intelligently, making room for what is coming. You may not consciously guide this process, and that is intentional. The body knows how to heal when it feels safe. It knows how to release when it is no longer under threat. Trusting this process is part of honoring your wholeness. You are not fixing yourself, you are allowing integration. As the recalibration completes, you may notice a new relationship with your body. There is less judgment, less urgency to change or control it. You listen more closely. You respond rather than override. This respect deepens the connection between body and soul. In this way, the physical body becomes more than a container, it becomes an ally. Ready, receptive, and resilient. Prepared not just to experience union, but to sustain it with presence, softness, and strength. There is a gentle yet profound return happening within you now, the return of joy without guilt. This is not the loud, fleeting happiness that comes from distraction or escape, but a steady joy that arises naturally when the nervous system no longer associates pleasure with danger. For a long time, moments of happiness may have been followed by fear, fear of loss, fear of disappointment, fear that joy was temporary or undeserved. But as your inner world stabilizes, joy no longer feels like something that must be guarded or rationed. It is allowed to exist fully. This shift marks a deep emotional maturation. You are no longer bracing for impact when good things happen. Happiness no longer triggers the old reflex of asking, "How long will this last?" Or, "What will I lose because of this?" Instead, joy is experienced in the present moment, without borrowing pain from the future. This does not mean you believe life will always be easy, it means you trust yourself enough to meet life as it unfolds. Joy is no longer fragile because you are no longer fragile in its presence. As this change settles, self-sabotage loses its purpose. In the past, happiness may have felt unfamiliar or unsafe, leading you to unconsciously disrupt it. This was not a flaw, it was conditioning rooted in survival. When the system is accustomed to stress, peace can feel threatening. But now, your body and psyche recognize joy as nourishing rather than destabilizing. You no longer need to return to discomfort to feel grounded. You can remain present in pleasure without anticipating punishment. One of the most liberating aspects of this phase is the permission to enjoy without justification. You no longer feel the need to earn rest, happiness, or pleasure through suffering or productivity. You stop explaining why you deserve good things. Joy no longer comes with an internal debate. This permission is not indulgence, it is balance. It reflects a restored relationship with yourself, one that no longer confuses worth with endurance. Spiritually, joy without guilt is a sign that you have integrated your lessons. You are no longer identifying with pain as proof of growth or depth. You understand that lightness does not negate wisdom, and happiness does not erase meaning. In fact, joy becomes an expression of alignment. It signals that your inner world is no longer dominated by fear-based narratives. You are living from presence rather than protection. This return of joy also prepares you for healthy connection. Love cannot thrive where happiness feels dangerous. When joy is allowed, relationships become places of expansion rather than tension. You are no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop. You can receive love, kindness, and pleasure without suspicion. This creates emotional safety, not just for you, but for those who connect with you. Ultimately, the return of joy without guilt is a homecoming. It is the realization that joy was never the enemy, it was always a guide. By allowing yourself to experience happiness freely, you affirm your readiness for the next chapter of your journey. You no longer need to withhold joy to prove strength. You are strong because you can hold joy gently, fully, and without fear. This is not the end of your growth. It is the beginning of living it. There comes a moment on the spiritual path when the long sense of searching quietly comes to an end. Not because every question has been answered, but because the place you were searching for has been recognized within you. This is the recognition of the self as home. It is not dramatic or euphoric. It is steady, grounding, and deeply relieving. The feeling of being displaced, of not fully belonging anywhere, softens and dissolves. You realize that the restlessness you carried was not a sign of absence, but a signal guiding you back to yourself. For much of the journey, home may have been projected outward. It may have appeared as another person, a relationship, a future moment, or a place where you believed you would finally feel settled. This projection was understandable. When inner safety has not yet been established, the nervous system looks externally for regulation. But now, something fundamental has shifted. Home is no longer a destination you are trying to reach. It is a state you inhabit. You feel anchored in your body, present in your life, and rooted in your own awareness. When home is felt internally, the constant sense of longing fades. You are no longer scanning for something missing. Silence no longer feels empty, it feels full. Being alone no longer carries an undertone of abandonment. Instead, solitude becomes nourishing. You recognize that your sense of belonging does not depend on being chosen, mirrored, or completed by another. This internal homecoming creates emotional stability that cannot be taken away by circumstance. Spiritually, this recognition changes how you approach connection and reunion. Love is no longer asked to save you or fill a void. Reunion becomes an addition to an already whole life, not a rescue from emptiness. This distinction is essential. When love is sought as a rescue, it carries pressure, expectation, and fear of loss. But when love is welcomed as an addition, it is free to be experienced without weight. It enhances rather than compensates. This internal sense of home is what prevents codependency in union. You are no longer leaning on another to regulate your emotions or define your worth. You do not lose yourself in connection because you know where you belong. Your boundaries become natural rather than defensive. You can stay open without dissolving. You can love deeply without abandoning yourself. This balance creates a foundation where union can be stable, conscious, and enduring. Recognizing the self as home also restores choice. You are no longer with someone because you fear being alone. You are with them because you choose them. This choice carries clarity and respect, for yourself and for the other. Love becomes an expression of alignment rather than attachment. You remain connected to yourself even as you connect with another, which allows intimacy to deepen without becoming consuming. Ultimately, this homecoming is a return to sovereignty. You stop outsourcing safety and belonging. You trust your own presence. From this place, relationships no longer define you, they meet you. Reunion, when it occurs, does not replace your center, it joins it. And because you are already home within yourself, love arrives not as something you need to survive, but as something you are ready to share. There is a quiet liberation that unfolds when external noise begins to lose its power. This is the neutralization of outside influence, the moment when opinions, expectations, and social narratives no longer shape your inner world. It does not happen through rebellion or withdrawal, but through grounding. You simply stop vibrating at the frequency where external voices can reach you. What once felt loud becomes distant. What once demanded reaction becomes neutral. Your inner landscape grows calm enough that outside interference can no longer take root. As this shift deepens, the opinions of others lose their emotional charge. You may still hear them, but they no longer penetrate. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not destabilize you. You are no longer measuring your worth through agreement or approval. This is not indifference, it is discernment. You understand that others speak from their own conditioning, fears, and projections. Their perspectives may be informative, but they are no longer authoritative over your experience. Alongside this, social pressure fades into irrelevance. The unspoken rules about timing, success, relationships, and milestones lose their grip. You stop asking whether you are on track compared to others. You no longer feel late, behind, or out of sync. Your path becomes its own reference point. This brings immense relief, because you are no longer trying to fit your life into someone else's template. You trust the rhythm of your unfolding without explanation. Comparison also dissolves naturally in this space. Not because you force yourself to stop comparing, but because it no longer makes sense. When you are aligned with your own journey, comparison feels illogical rather than tempting. You recognize that every soul carries a unique curriculum. Measuring yourself against another would be like comparing two different languages and deciding one is superior. The need to evaluate disappears when self-acceptance settles in. Spiritually, this neutralization marks a deepening of integrity. Your journey becomes private, not secretive, but sacred. You stop broadcasting your growth or seeking witnesses for your healing. This privacy is not isolation, it is respect for the inner process. You understand that some transformations lose their potency when exposed too early. By keeping your journey grounded, you allow it to integrate fully rather than fragment under observation. This grounded privacy strengthens your connection to yourself. You listen more closely to your own signals. You trust your timing. Decisions feel quieter but more certain. You are no longer pulled in multiple directions by competing advice or trends. This clarity stabilizes your energy and creates emotional resilience. When challenges arise, you meet them from within rather than seeking immediate external validation. The neutralization of external noise also enhances authenticity in connection. You no longer perform your life for others. Relationships become more honest because you are no longer filtering yourself through expectation. You show up as you are, without over-explaining or self-editing. This authenticity is felt by others, even if they cannot articulate it. It creates deeper, cleaner connections. Ultimately, this phase is about reclaiming sovereignty over your inner world. You are no longer available for distraction disguised as guidance. You are no longer swayed by trends, timelines, or opinions that do not align with your truth. Your journey becomes something you walk with reverence and steadiness. In this quiet, grounded space, life feels less chaotic and more intentional. You are not rushing, proving, or comparing. You are simply living, rooted in your own rhythm, guided by inner knowing, and protected by the calm that comes when nothing outside you is louder than your own truth. There is a profound inner settling that occurs when the heart chakra stabilizes. For much of the spiritual journey, the heart may have felt like a place of extremes, wide open one moment, painfully guarded the next. Love surged and retreated. Hope rose quickly and crashed just as fast. This volatility was not a failure, it was part of the healing process. The heart was learning discernment. Now, as stabilization takes place, emotional extremes soften into something far more sustainable: steadiness. This steadiness does not dull feeling or reduce depth. Instead, it creates a consistent emotional ground from which love can flow without overwhelming the system. You no longer swing between overattachment and withdrawal. Joy does not feel intoxicating, and sadness does not feel consuming. Emotions move through the heart rather than overtaking it. This is one of the clearest signs of heart chakra balance: the ability to feel fully without losing yourself in what you feel. As the heart stabilizes, the way you express love naturally changes. Overgiving fades without effort. You no longer equate love with sacrifice, exhaustion, or self-erasure. There is no internal pressure to prove devotion by doing more than feels right. Love becomes reciprocal, grounded, and honest. You give because you want to, not because you fear losing connection. This shift brings relief, as the heart no longer carries the burden of sustaining relationships alone. Boundaries also transform during this phase. They no longer feel like walls built to keep pain out. Instead, they feel like gentle edges that define where you end and another begins. You do not need to justify them or defend them aggressively. They arise naturally from self-respect. When a boundary is crossed, your response is calm and clear rather than reactive. This clarity protects the heart without hardening it. Spiritually, a stabilized heart chakra becomes a center of coherence rather than conflict. The heart is no longer a battlefield where fear and love compete for control. It becomes a steady anchor point, a place you can return to regardless of circumstance. Decisions made from this center feel aligned and compassionate toward both yourself and others. You are no longer torn between what you feel and what you know. The heart and wisdom work together. This stability also changes how you receive love. You are no longer suspicious of kindness or bracing for disappointment. You allow affection, care, and intimacy to reach you without tightening. The heart trusts that it can remain open without being overwhelmed. This trust creates emotional safety, which is essential for healthy connection and lasting union. When the heart becomes stable, love is no longer dramatic, it is dependable. It does not need intensity to feel real. It does not need struggle to feel meaningful. This kind of love is quieter but deeper. It supports growth rather than chaos. It allows you to remain present even during challenges. Ultimately, the stabilization of the heart chakra is a return to balance. You are no longer guarding your heart with fear or offering it without limits. You are holding it with care. From this place, love flows freely but wisely. The heart becomes a sanctuary rather than a battleground, a steady, open center capable of giving and receiving without losing itself. There is a quiet threshold you are crossing now, one that does not announce itself with fireworks or emotional intensity, but with something far more powerful: permanence. This is the entry into long-term alignment. It is not a temporary spiritual high, not a fleeting sense of clarity or inspiration that fades with time. What is happening now anchors itself into the fabric of your daily life. It becomes how you move, how you choose, how you respond. Alignment is no longer something you touch briefly and then lose. It becomes the ground you stand on. In earlier phases of the journey, moments of alignment may have felt euphoric but unstable. You would glimpse peace, clarity, or connection, only to feel it slip away under stress or uncertainty. That cycle is ending. The changes taking place now are integrating at a deeper level, into your nervous system, your habits, your self-perception. You are not trying to stay aligned anymore. You simply are. Even when challenges arise, you do not lose yourself in them. You return to center more quickly, with less effort. This sustained frequency of alignment brings a profound sense of steadiness. You are no longer driven by emotional spikes or fear-based urgency. Decisions are not rushed. Reactions are not explosive. You feel grounded in your body and present in your life. Alignment shows up in simple ways: consistency, clarity, and calm follow-through. You trust yourself not because everything is perfect, but because you are stable within yourself. Spiritually, this marks a shift from seeking to embodying. You are no longer chasing healing, answers, or awakening. Those processes have matured into lived wisdom. Your values are no longer theoretical, they guide your behavior. Your boundaries are no longer aspirational, they are practiced. This is how alignment becomes long-term. It moves from insight into embodiment. One of the most important outcomes of this phase is how it transforms connection and union. When alignment is unstable, love is often driven by urgency, fear of missing out, fear of losing the moment, fear of delay. That urgency creates pressure, which destabilizes connection. But when alignment is sustained, union unfolds from solidity. You are no longer trying to secure love quickly or prove readiness. You are available without chasing, present without grasping. Union that arises from solidity does not require dramatic gestures or constant reassurance. It grows naturally, supported by consistency and mutual grounding. There is space for timing, integration, and mutual choice. You do not feel behind or rushed. You trust the unfolding because you trust yourself. This trust removes the emotional volatility that once surrounded connection. Long-term alignment also brings patience without passivity. You are engaged with life, but not forcing outcomes. You move forward steadily, knowing that what aligns will meet you where you are. There is no desperation to arrive somewhere else, because your inner state is no longer dependent on future events. This is true alignment, when the present moment is stable enough to hold the future. As you enter this phase, you may notice that life feels quieter, but more real. Less dramatic, but more meaningful. This is not stagnation, it is integration. You are no longer climbing toward alignment. You are living from it. And from this place, everything that unfolds, especially union, does so with strength, sustainability, and truth. Before you go, pause for a moment and really feel what's shifting for you right now. If this message resonated, it's because the energy we talked about is already active in your life. So I want you to do something specific. Comment the word alignment if you feel your twin flame connection is at a turning point this week. That one word helps anchor the intention and lets others know they're not alone in this experience. And tell me this, have you already felt a change, emotionally, energetically, or through signs and synchronicities, since the December 12th portal began activating? Even if it's subtle, share it in the comments. Your story might be the confirmation someone else is searching for right now. This community grows stronger when we speak these shifts out loud. When we share, the energy multiplies, and that's how alignment becomes real, not just something we think about. If this video gave you clarity, reassurance, or that deep inner yes, make sure to like it so this message reaches the people who need it most. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the energy unfolding right now doesn't stop here, and the next videos will guide you through what comes after this portal opens. Stay present, stay grounded, and trust what's moving toward you. I'll see you in the next video.